Hey everybody, happy Sunday to you. I'm David Robinson, and I'm really grateful you're spending part of your Sunday here at CCC. I'm sure you're aware there are all these phobias out there, right? Like arachnophobia. You ever heard of that before? You know what that is? Yeah, it's a fear of spiders. Or claustrophobia. That's right, it's the fear of small spaces. How about this one? Acrophobia. Yeah, that's the fear of heights. Or how about this one? Astrophobia. It's the fear of thunder and lightning. A lot of pets have that one. Or this one, how about this one? Dentophobia. You know what that one is? It's the fear of going to the dentist. I totally get that one. I understand that one. Anyone know what the number one fear is for folks? That's right. Public speaking is the number one fear year after year after year. You know what the number two is? Death. It seems like death should be like number one, don't you think? Because death looms out there for everybody. Everyone dies, you know. Fred Carl Cooner, he said, death is the most democratic institution on earth. It allows no discrimination, tolerates no exceptions. The mortality rate of mankind is the same world over, 1 death per person. Or as the psalmist wrote, you know, in Psalm 89, who can live and not see death? Who can escape the power of the grave? No one, right? We all die. The geniuses die, the rich die, the poor die. No one outruns it. No one outsmarts it. Julius Caesar died. John Kennedy died. Princess Diana died. Elvis died. At least we think he died. We all die, like nearly 2 people every second, more than 7,000 an hour, more than 158,000 every day, about 67 million people a year. No one escapes death. I mean, exercise all you want, eat nothing but healthy foods, pop fistfuls of vitamins, stay out of the sun, stay away from alcohol, stay off drugs, do the best you can to stay alive, and still you die. Death, it seems like such a dead end. I don't know, some of you are like, Dave, these jokes, they just kill me. Man. Death seems like a one-way street, except it's not. It's not, because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We read about it in the Gospel of Matthew, and this all took place on a Sunday morning after a Friday execution, and the sky was dark, and the disciples, they had all scattered about, and they were afraid for their lives. And the Roman executioner, man, he was wondering about breakfast or work or his next day off or how his NCAA bracket was doing or whatever. But he was not wondering about the guy he had nailed to a cross and pierced with a spear on Friday, because Jesus was dead and buried. He was yesterday's news, right? Not so much. Matthew says there was a violent earthquake. For an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Don't be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." So God shook up the cemetery, you understand. Trees swayed, the ground trembled. The women kind of struggled to maintain their balance. And they looked in the direction of the tomb only to see guards, you know, scared stiff, paralyzed there, sprawled on the ground, which is kind of ironic. You know, the guards of the dead appear dead while the dead one appears to be living, you know. And they see this angel sitting on a dislodged tombstone. He didn't stand in defiance. He didn't crouch in alertness. He sat. I imagine him like sitting on top of that stone, legs are crossed. Maybe he's whistling something like Stairway to Heaven, you know, or something like that. Right? I mean, You don't know. Could have been. We don't know. What we do know from Matthew is the angel sat upon the stone. And again, some irony here. The very rock intended to mark the resting place of a dead Jesus became the resting place of his living angel. And then the announcement there, he is not here, he has risen from the dead, just as he said he would. He has risen. Those 3 words. They're 3 words in our English, but it's just one word in the original Greek, agertha. And so much rests on the validity of that one word, agertha. Because if it's false, then the whole of Christianity collapses like just a big old joke. But if it's true, well, then everything's different. Everything's changed. Jesus has now become the resurrected Lord and King, and death doesn't have the same power, doesn't have the same punch. 1 Corinthians says death has been swallowed up in victory. As a people who identify with and trust fully in Jesus, we hold to the unshakable hope that hinges on the resurrection of him. Christian hope depends entirely upon the assumption that Jesus Christ died a physical death, vacated an actual grave, and ascended into heaven, where he at this very moment reigns as head of the church. The resurrection changed everything. And this is the heart of our faith, gang. Without this, we are just wasting our time here today. The Apostle Paul, he said as much when he wrote to the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians 15. He said, if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. And if Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile. You're still in your sin. Those who have fallen asleep in Christ are lost. If only for this life we have hope in Christ, then we are to be pitied more than all, see. Had this not happened, and those words weren't spoken by the angel, had the body of Jesus just decayed into dust in that borrowed tomb, then you and I would not be here today, and we would not be talking about this. But the words were spoken. We believe and hold to that it did happen. The resurrection of Jesus Christ most assuredly happened, and that changes everything. Not for just what happens like when we face death, when we die, but our purpose, our longing for a purpose, our hope for a future, our need to be forgiven, our deep desire to connect with our Creator. I mean, all of this and more are possible and available because Jesus rose from the dead. And part of how we know this and why we know this is because Jesus, he went on a resurrection tour of sorts. You know, he appeared to the women who had gone to the tomb very early to prepare the body. He appeared to his followers in an upper room, not once but twice. He appeared to some disciples on the road to Emmaus. He appeared to his friends on the shore of the Galilee, the Sea of Galilee. He appeared to a group of more than 500 people at one time. He appeared to his brother James. He appeared to all the apostles. He appeared to the Apostle Paul, too. They spoke with him. They ate with him. They touched him. They heard his words. They saw Jesus risen from the dead. Agertha. He has risen. And he's not risen from like a sleep or not some sort of confusion, you know, not risen from a stupor or a slumber, not spiritually raised from the dead, physically raised from the dead. The women that day and the disciples and others, they didn't see a phantom or experience a sentiment. They saw Jesus in the flesh. It is I myself, he assured them in Luke 24. Like those Emmaus-bound disciples thought Jesus was a fellow pilgrim to Jerusalem. His feet touched the ground. You know, his hands touched the bread they ate. Mary mistook him for a gardener. Thomas studied his wounds in his hands. The disciples, they ate fish that he cooked. The resurrected Jesus did physical deeds in a physical body. I'm not a ghost, he says. Handle me and see, for a spirit, doesn't have flesh and bones as you see that I have. The bodily resurrection of Jesus means everything. If Jesus lives on only in spirit, he is one of thousands of dead and inspirational heroes. That's it. But if he lives on in flesh and bone, he is the king who conquered death and paid our debt and bridged the gap and made a way. And check this out. What he did with his own death, conquering death, he promises to do with ours. See, the resurrection also ushers in, just like with Jesus, a new body for us. 1 John 3:2 says, when Jesus appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We shall be like him, you see. Think about that. Anybody who battles this physical body, which is all of us, our bodies break down. We're fragile. We're jars of clay, Back in November, I had surgery on my wrist. This was my 10th surgery on my body. Knee, back, shoulder, and now my wrist. For 2 months, I was in a cast up to my elbow. Some of you noticed, I've been in physical therapy, rehabbing for like the last 2 months since I got out of that cast. And just this past Thursday, I was released to resume regular activities, Physical therapist, she said it might be sore. You don't have full range of motion yet. You're at 75 or 80%. And as you start to resume all these things, you might get to 85 or 90. And hopefully, a year or so removed from surgery, you might get to 95, hopefully inching toward 100%. I said, so it's okay. I got these certain pains that I do when I do some of the exercises that you've had me do. They have me do this thing hold it forever, and then they flip, and that hurts a lot when I flip and have to hold it and then flip back and then flip and all this kind of thing. Push-ups, I can't stand push-ups. I've never liked push-ups in my life. You can tell, I'm against push-ups in some sort of way. But they had me do these weak push-ups, as part of physical therapy. So I'm leaning against the wall at first, trying to push it up, then a table. And then, when I'm on my knees there, and I said, it really, really hurts, still when I do a push-up and I have my wrist in that, position there. And she says to me, don't do push-ups. I was like, where have you been all my life? She said, preserve the joint now. Fact of the matter is, you've had surgery in there, it's never going to be the same. And so preserve the joint now. I am so ready for that new body, aren't you? And because of the resurrection, one day, I will have it. We will have it. One day, because of the resurrection, we will graduate from this version of life into his likeness, see? And it's not just that. It's not just a physical body. We'll have a spiritual body too. In our current condition, our flesh just battles with our spirit. Our eyes look where they shouldn't. Our taste buds, they desire the wrong things. Our heart has longings, which we know we shouldn't act on. Our heart knows we shouldn't be anxious, but our mind, it ends up still worrying, We can certainly relate to what Romans 7 says. When the Apostle Paul, he says, I truly delight in God's commands, but it's pretty obvious that not all of me joins in that delight. Parts of me covertly rebel, and just when I least expect it, they take charge. You see, but we will no longer rebel in heaven. Our new body will be a new spiritual body with all its members cooperating toward one end. I love this quote from Johnny Erickson Tada. Her words are powerful on this point. If you know anything about her, she's been confined to a wheelchair since she was 17 years old. And yet the greatest heavenly attraction for her is not new legs, but a new soul. Listen to what she writes. I can't wait to be clothed in righteousness, without a trace of sin. True, it will be wonderful to stand, stretch, and reach to the sky, but it will be more wonderful to offer praise that is pure. I won't be crippled by distractions. I won't be disabled by insincerity. I won't be handicapped by a ho-hum half-heartedness. My heart will join with yours and bubble over with effervescent adoration. we will finally be able to fellowship fully with the Father and the Son. And for me, this will be the best part of heaven. See, in heaven, there will be no more curse, gang. There's the promise of new bodies, no doubt. No more diabetes, no more cardiac arrests, no more cancer, but also no more selfishness and stinginess, no more deceit or denial or distrust, things that ruin community. What awaits us is that sin will no longer be at war with our flesh. Eyes won't lust, and thoughts won't be, tainted. Hands won't steal. Minds won't judge. Appetites won't rage. Tongues won't lie. Desires will be redeemed. We will be brand new all the way around. Some of us, we live in such road-weary bodies. Knees that ache and eyes that dim and skin that sags. And while I don't have any easy answers, I urge us all to see our challenge, whatever our challenge is, in the scope of God's story and through the lens of His resurrection. Hold to an eternal perspective, you see. 2 Corinthians tells us what that's like, so we're not giving up, he writes. How could we? Even though on the outside it often looks like things are falling apart on us, on the inside where God is making new life, not a day goes by without His unfolding grace. These hard times are small potatoes compared to the coming good times, the lavish celebration prepared for us. There's far more here than meets the eye. The things we see now are here today, gone tomorrow, but the things we can't see now will last forever. We got to build our lives, everything about our lives, on the one who said, I'm the resurrection and the life. See, it's the cornerstone of our faith, and it needs to be the cornerstone of our lives. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead is the watershed event for our faith, and really the watershed event for all of human history. And we're launching this series today, all focused on the resurrection. We're going to spend some time the rest of this month leading up to Easter, post-Easter, exploring several encounters that Jesus had with different people after His resurrection. See, what happens a lot of times, we're in a series or something, we lead up to the resurrection and we celebrate it one day, and then we move on. And we're not going to do that this year. We're going to linger in these resurrection accounts for the next month or so and see how these folks are changed and what we can learn from them all. I hope you'll be here for every moment of it, every week of it. By the way, do you know who the first person who saw the resurrected Jesus was? It was a woman. In fact, that's one of the strongest proofs as to the integrity of the resurrection, is the fact that the first eyewitnesses were women. See, back in Jesus' day, a woman's testimony wasn't even admissible in court. So, think about this. If you were making up a story, if you were fabricating a lie in that culture, and you were kind of trying to convince people of something that wasn't true, you wouldn't make a woman the first witness. It would undermine your credibility. You would make a man, a respected man in particular, being the first witness to see Jesus alive. But that's not the way God unfolded His story, because God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And the Bible doesn't read like a lie, because it's the truth. The first person to see the risen Jesus was a woman. And she was quite a woman, too. And she had quite a past. Her name was Mary Magdalene. And in John 20, we see a little bit more of what happened after that stone was rolled away. Here's where we meet Mary here. Now, Mary stood outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head, the other at the foot. And they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" Listen to this. "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they put him." And at this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. And in verse 15, he asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking that he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you put him, and I'll go get him." And then Jesus said to her, "Mary." And she turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. See, Mary Magdalene had buried more than a friend. She had buried the only person who had ever helped her. In Mark's gospel, he gives us some insight into her resume. Like it was more something you'd want to conceal rather than something you reveal, because in Mark 16, it tells us that months before, Jesus had healed Mary Magdalene of 7 demons. Now, can you imagine what life was like for her, afflicted by some sort of demon possession? In the Bible, the number 7 often means complete. And when Jesus found her, Mary was completely afflicted. And we don't know how these demonic presences manifested themselves in her, but it must have been brutal, I would think. Must have changed the way every single person interacted with her, or the ways that they actually avoided her. But then Jesus came along, and instead of shunning her, he transformed her and he healed her. A person that nobody else would give the time of day to, a person that everybody else was probably terrified of. But Jesus Christ changed her. Have you experienced the change in your life that only Jesus Christ can bring? Like a peace that, I don't know, just comforts you and it confounds people, no matter what you face in this life. A confidence because he accepts you. He accepts you, you see. A humility that permeates every part of your life. An ability to forgive because of the way that you have been forgiven. See, part of what we see here with Mary is that she stayed devoted to Jesus even after his death. She was grateful, no doubt, I'm sure, but it was so much more than that. I mean, did you notice the words to the angels? She said, "They have taken away my Lord." Think about this. Thousands called him Lord when he entered Jerusalem, a week earlier on Palm Sunday. 12 called him Lord as he washed their feet in the upper room. But when everyone thought he was dead and buried, only one person called him Lord at this point, and that was Mary Magdalene. She was devoted, and her love for her took her to the tomb on Sunday morning so she could prepare his body for burial. See, this is a relationship here, not just about something she could get out of him. He completely changed her. See, she thinks he's gone. She thinks he's dead. And still she calls him Lord. It's great, great devotion. See? She had seen his power at work in her life. This is a relationship here. And she thinks she's seeing the gardener. If you carried him away, tell me where you put him. I'll go get him. She couldn't go get him even if she found him, right? She couldn't have carried his body. But at that moment, she's not driven by logic. She's driven by devotion. She's driven by love. And I wonder if, like Jesus, disguised his voice when he said, "Why are you crying?" But then he says her name, Mary, and then she recognizes him. And there's a lot we can learn from Mary. She's looking for him. Think about this. She's looking for him. Are you looking for him? She shows up. And she's confused. She's just, her heart is broken. Everything about her life, was put back together because of him, and now he's gone. And yet she shows up. Her whole life is flipped on its head, but she still shows up. She's devoted to him when things aren't working out the way that she had hoped. Can you say the same? See, something happens in our life a lot of times, and man, we use it as an excuse to stay away, don't we? Think about your life. Is there any part of your life that is not going the way that you had hoped it would go? It's off script in some way. Well, are you still looking for him there in the midst of that? Is he still Lord? Is he still the one for you? We even know the resurrection of Jesus Christ now. We're on the flip side of it. And yet, if it's not real convenient, we kind of stop the search, don't we? Flip the script this Easter. Call him Lord. Look for him, just like Mary. Always be looking for him. We need to take a page out of her book. We need to keep going. We need to keep, in the midst of whatever uncertainty or storm, we need to keep showing up. Keep coming to the table. You don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have it all figured out just yet. But you keep showing up at the table because you have a seat at the table by invitation of Jesus Christ himself, the resurrected Lord. Book of Hebrews says he too shared in their humanity so that by his death he might destroy him who holds the power of death and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. We're going to commemorate and celebrate Jesus' love for us, his sacrifice, his death, burial, and resurrection. We do it every week through something called communion. Take a piece of bread, a little bit of juice, remember Jesus' body and his blood spilled for us on the cross. We're going to celebrate that now. If you didn't get one of those individually wrapped packets, they're in the back. And let's take a few moments right now. Let's thank God. Remember how God has worked in your life. Let's celebrate that now.